What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Before I get started on the video, just want to let everybody know that tonight I'm going to be live with Bad Dog for Talking Giants. We normally do that later in the week, but the Knicks and the Lakers schedules don't really match up this week, so we'll be doing it tonight at 10:30. Of course, we're going to recap free agency. We'll recap some of the news of today, and we'll start to shift our focus towards the draft, because at this point in time, I think the New York Giants free agency is pretty much sewn up. Also, probably have at least one more additional video out today, kind of waiting on some things, waiting on the Adoree Jackson contract, so I could, analyze the next year's cap and kind of talk about the contract and how the New York Giants structured it. And I kind of want to try to do a video for you guys talking about what I think the biggest needs are for the New York Giants after free agency. But in this video, we're going to jump into two topics. We're going to talk about Kyle Rudolph. Of course, a big story came out yesterday that the New York Giants were worried about a potential foot injury that came about, and that they had not signed the contract yet. They had agreed to terms in principle, and then a lot of Giants fans thought maybe they're going to get out of this contract, maybe they're going to restructure the contract, and, we're going to have to wait and see what the length of this injury is. Well, Mike Garafolo came out with a report today. We're going to jump into the exact tweet, but good news, New York Giants fans, and I'm glad that Rudolph is going to be here. I think he's a guy that fits the scheme very well, sure-handed, something we definitely need at the tight end spot, and he's going to bring leadership to this football team. Was kind of a big surprise for me. I did not expect the New York Giants to go out there and add another tight end, but it was a pleasant surprise. I think he fits this scheme very well. We're going to jump into that in a second. We'll pull up the quotes. Also, I'm going to touch on the restructures by the New York Giants. They decided to restructure both Blake Martinez and James Bradberry. Dan Duggan kind of retweeted about it, and I agree with him. And I think that it was inevitable. When you look at the cap, the New York Giants had to find a way to be able to pay Adoree Jackson, which the salary cap figures have not come out on that yet. I have heard that he's going to get $16 million of the $39 will be paid in year one, and maybe that's the way that the New York Giants are looking at this. They're trying to front load that salary. Maybe they're worried about the injury concerns and things like that, and they may not want to make more than a 2-year commitment to him. So they're backloading other salaries to allow them to do it with this year's cap. As far as the cap is right now, Giants don't have a ton of money, and I don't know how updated it is on Spot Track. I don't know if the Nate Solder restructure is 100% correct, because when I went and looked at 2022, didn't seem like it, but as of now, they have very little money to spend. They still got to pay Adoree Jackson. So don't expect the New York Giants, because of this, to go out there and make other signings. You still have draft expenses. They made this so they could bring in Adoree Jackson. That's the reason they did it. And I wouldn't be shocked if they make another extension or two, or another restructure or two, to free up a little bit more money in order to pay some of these draft picks. But we're going to talk more about that for a lot of Giants fans that may be panicking due to 2016 when the Giants went hog wild, and why I think there is a big-time difference this time around with the New York Giants. Next, we're going to pull up the quote from Mike Garafolo. And here it is, talking about, obviously, Kyle Rudolph. Okay, so here's the resolution for the Giants tight end Kyle Rudolph, according to sources. He'll soon have foot surgery on his foot. The medical issue that raised a flag to the physical will be addressed. Team honors the contract it agreed to. So the Giants are going to be paying him that $12 million, 7.5 year one, 4.5 year one, 7.5 year two. The contract is signed. Rudolph ready for week one. So nothing to worry about there. Kyle Rudolph will be a New York Giant. He'll be lining up in blue, and it will be week one. I suppose the only question that still remains is, will Kyle Rudolph be able to practice fully? Will he be in pads? Once we start going to mandatory minicamp, OTAs, training camp, preseason games, things like that. And I'm sure we're going to get, access to his timetable. Now, he's a guy that you would like to get out there as soon as possible. You want him to develop chemistry with Daniel Jones in the passing game, but he's a veteran. He's been in the league for 10 years. I think he'll pick it up pretty quick, and he'll do a good job for the New York Giants. I think he's an all-around tight end. He's going to be a really good blocker as well, something that we desperately need. Next thing we're going to talk about is, was initially tweeted by Field Yates, and then Dan Duggan, I think, went into it in further detail, explaining it better. But Field Yates came out with a tweet talking about the restructures, Tre'Davious White, James Bradberry, Blake Martinez, Whitney Mercilus. Of course, we're only concerned with the two players in the middle. And by doing this, it will free up $7.5 million on this year's cap, presumably to pay, for some of these salaries that we've brought in, mainly Adoree Jackson. This is coming out from Duggan. Bradberry and Martinez restructures were unavoidable. Creates $7.5 million of cap space this year, but each $7.5 more into next year's cap. Bradberry's cap it will be $20.5 million next year. Martinez will be $14 million. He later went on to talk about some of the hits for the other players on this roster as they had to backload contracts due to the pandemic. The Giants' 2022 cap, it's Williams 26.5, 25.5 in year 3, but they will have the ability to get out if he's not performing. I think it's only a $7 million dead cap hit, would save about $18 million on the 2023 salary cap. Galladay at 20.15, pretty much unavoidable. You're not getting out of that. Bradberry at 20.5, you could get out of that, but I don't think the New York Giants are going to be rushing to do that. Martinez at $14 million, and Jackson to be determined. So there are the big hits for next year's cap. And yeah, going into this offseason, the New York Giants had roughly $100 million in salary cap, and you knew it was going to be eaten up fast. And that cap that they show in Spot Track is also including the fifth-year rookie extension to Saquon Barkley, which I also think is inevitable. At the end of the year, the Giants will have to decide whether or not to extend him or let him play in that fifth year if he is healthy and plays well for this football team. Now, if they extend him, I'm sure they could structure in a way to make this work. Now, how is this different from 2016? In 2016, of course, the New York Giants went out there, they went hog wild, as Mara likes to say. And they tried to beef up that defense as best they could. The offense was coming off a good year in 2015. The defense was horrendous, and they spent big contracts on Janoris Jenkins, Snacks Harrison, and Olivier Vernon, 2 of which were 5-year deals, long-term commitments. And they had a quarterback that was already getting paid top-tier money. Of course, Eli Manning had gotten his extension and was still going a lot against the cap. The major difference here for me is Daniel Jones is still on his rookie salary. And going into this year, I said before the pandemic that I thought the New York Giants had to try to accelerate this process. Of course, the pandemic hit, so that led me to believe that they may not be as aggressive as I initially thought they would be. The reason I thought they had to be aggressive was 2 reasons. One, Daniel Jones, you have to be able to evaluate your quarterback, and you have to be able to go out there and help him as best you can, which is exactly what the New York Giants did. Of course, they're going to have to beef up that offensive line potentially in the draft, but they got him some weapons in order to evaluate their quarterback. But the even bigger reason, you have to the best opportunity to win a Super Bowl or compete for a Super Bowl is when you have your quarterback on your rookie contract. If the New York Giants did not start to get aggressive sooner than later, they were going to waste that opportunity to be able to take advantage of Jones on his rookie salary. Jones will still be under an affordable salary for the next 3 years if you include the 5th-year option starting this year. And of course, it is the Giants' plans, and we don't know if it's going to work, but it is in the Giants' plans to make sure that Daniel Jones is that franchise quarterback. They invested a 6th overall pick in him. So if they believe in him to be the long-term answer, well, they better find out quick, and they have to try to take advantage of that rookie salary. You only have 3 years in which he's making like $8, $9, $10 million. Then he's going to get $40 or $45 million if he turns out to be a really good quarterback, which of course they believe he is. So the Giants had to get aggressive. The good news here is all of these contracts are short-term deals outside of the Kenny Galladay deal. The Leonard Williams salary, like I said, you could get out in 2 years if you want to. Okay, and even if you don't, it's only a 3-year commitment. Even the Kenny Galladay salary, as I've talked about in the past, is at most a 3-year commitment. Obviously, we want to see him the full 4 years, but you don't know if he'll regress. Maybe he has injuries, whatever it may be. It's really only a 3-year commitment. You could even get out in 2 if you really wanted to. If he had a ton of injuries, he would carry a $10 million dead cap hit in comparison to a $21 million salary. Along with a bunch of others, and a lot of 1-year signings here. Nothing crazy. Shepard, you could get out after this year. There's things that the New York Giants will be able to do to make sure their books are as clean as possible for 2023, which is when I think you're going to start to have to, pay some of these younger players on this roster. Now, as far as next year goes, could be a challenge for the New York Giants. They have a number of pending free agents. I'll talk about it in a further video in more detail. But Jabril Peppers, Will Hernandez, Evan Ingram, along with a couple of others that the New York Giants are going to have to make a tough decision about whether or not to extend them. Because then if you start extending them and you couple with the salaries that we tacked on this year, well, now it's going to be challenging to keep players like Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. And the Giants will have to think long and hard about that. I personally would love Peppers back. I think he fits the scheme perfectly. He's a captain. I think he's a leader. And I think in the end, the Giants will find a way to get that done. If you ask me about Will Hernandez, I'm leaning probably no. The New York Giants didn't show a lot of confidence in him next year. And if the answer is no, it makes it even more imperative that the New York Giants fill that void in the draft this year and get themselves an interior offensive lineman. We're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out as far as the offensive line goes. And the same thing you could say about the interior defensive line, by the way. Are you going to extend B.J. Hill if he has a good year? I don't know if you're going to be able to find it in the cap. Are you going to extend Austin Johnson if he has a good year? Might be a stopgap, which is what makes me think an interior defensive lineman could be a possibility in this year's draft. There's a lot of moves that they can make. You could say the same thing at the wide receiver position, being that it's possible you could move on from Shepard after this year. A lot of questions that need to be answered as we approach the draft, but I think the Giants basically, essentially what they did was, rather than going hog wild next year, they did it this year, and next year they're going to have to be conservative. They gave themselves a 2 or 3 year window with Jones still on that rookie salary to try to compete for a championship. And in the end, I think it's the right decision. Now, the question is, are these players going to put this team in contention? And we're going to have to wait to see over the next 2 seasons whether or not the New York Giants could take that jump. But I applaud the Giants for trying to go for it, because if you're ever going to go for it, this is the time. Daniel Jones on the 3rd year of his rookie salary. Once he gets paid those big bucks, you're going to have to clear the cap, and you're going to need to start to hit on your draft picks, because it makes it a lot harder in the NFL, as we all know, once your quarterback gets paid the big bucks. And hopefully Daniel Jones goes out there this year and improves. The Giants have shown a lot of confidence in him with some of the things they've done this offseason. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.